Hey folks, and welcome to another West Yorkshire Retro Gamer video. It's another Leeds United one. As you probably know by now, we are promoted. We are guaranteed promotion to the Premier League. And so, this got me thinking, what do Leeds need to be able to stay in the Premier League? Over the last 2 seasons, the 3 teams that have gone up from the Championship have come straight back down. Leeds can't afford for this to happen. Not a chance. So, it got me thinking. Got me thinking about the current squad. Got me thinking about potential new players. Got me thinking about what Farker needs, what the club needs. And what the club potentially needs to do regarding the current squad. So I've kind of outlined things in 4 separate boxes here. So top left is the current squad. Bottom left are all the players that are currently out on loan. The top right box are players that I think could help Leeds United to stay in the Premier League. And the bottom right is some more generic points that I think need to happen. So, I'm going to start with the players currently out on loan. Now, JB and Crew, I have separated those a little bit from the other 9 players. Reason being, I think that JB and Crew may well be given another loan spell. I don't think that either of them are going to trouble the first team. I believe that both of them still have some length on their contracts, but ultimately playing in the under-21s is not going to help their development. And if the club sees a future for the 2 of them, then loan moves to good, solid championship teams, I think, as well, is the direction that JB and Crew will go. Crew's been playing in League 2 this season and done very well. JB's played at the bottom of the Championship and done very well. So I think that certainly Crew will need to step up to League 1 for his next loan spell, I would say. Crew's still only very young. He's still only 18, I believe, so he's got plenty of time. JB's a little older, he's like 21 now, so he's going to have to step it up a little. But both players still have potential, and I think Leeds might decide to get the pair of them a really good loan spell for this next season to aid in their development. So on to the other 9 that are in that bottom left box. Jack Harrison's made it very clear that he doesn't want to return to Leeds United. His mum has even said that he does not want to go back to Leeds United. Harrison had some moments of real quality, and then other moments where he went very cold. For Leeds to stay up, they can't rely on players who are going to be hot and cold. They need consistency. Harrison hasn't had the best of times whilst being out on loan at Everton, so I think that the club will assist Harrison in getting a move elsewhere on a permanent basis. I don't think another loan move suits Leeds or Harrison. Whether he's done enough to get himself another Premier League move, possible, or maybe somewhere like Glasgow Celtic perhaps, somewhere where he would probably thrive. To be honest, he'd probably be a good player in the Scottish Premier at the top end of it, and he would get European football if he was to nail a move. It really depends on transfer fee and wages, and whether he would even consider doing that. But that's my take on Harrison. He will be gone. I don't think he plays for Leeds United again. Moving on to Sam Greenwood and Joe Gallagher, I'm going to pair the 2 of them together. The 2 of them are of a similar age. They both showed glimpses of what they can do, but I think that their level probably is Championship. I think they'll both be good Championship players. I don't think they'll set the Championship alight. I think they're too good for League One. Albeit if the two of them did join a League One club, I think they would thrive. I think they would absolutely rip League One to shreds. They're both only like 21, 22-year-old. Greenwood's got a fantastic free kick on him. Gellar, if you get him in the right positions, is a very tidy little striker. But I believe that, if a club could get both of them together, because as a front two, Greenwood and Gellar were excellent at youth level for Leeds United. They were very, very good. So I think that, if a club's willing to take a punt on getting the pair of them, they could be getting these for a bargain. I really believe that. But yeah, they're Championship level and they're not complete youths anymore. They've got plenty of time to improve, but I don't think that either Greenwood or Gellar is what Leeds need now. But like them both, and I think that both of them will go on to have very good careers. Certainly at Championship level, I would say. Sonny Perkins never really worked out for him at Leeds. Him and Matteo Joseph came through the youth together at Leeds, and where Joseph has kicked on to be a decent squad player for the first team, it never really worked out for Perkins. He's gone on loan to Leyton Orient, and I believe his contract at Leeds is up this summer. So Leyton Orient could potentially get him on a free, and I believe that that's where Perkins came from before he joined West Ham. So that'd work out for him, I think. I think it just makes sense for both Perkins and for Leyton Orient to just let him go there on a free. I don't know whether there'd be a tribunal with his contract running out, but I think that Leeds should just let Leyton Orient have him for peanuts, really. Keane Coleman has had a couple of loan spells at Buxton and done very, very well. I think that Coleman's level could be a little higher than that. Very tidy player at under 21 level, and could potentially maybe get up to maybe League Two, I think. But he's had a couple of very good loan spells at Buxton. And the club, again, I think Coleman's contract, like Perkins, is coming to an end this summer. So I believe that Keane Coleman, could well join Buxton. I think he's enjoyed his time there. So if Buxton can afford his wages, with him being a young player, I think they could probably snap him up and have a good player on their hands. So yeah, again, wish Keane Coleman all the very best. I don't think he has a future at Leeds though. Luca Thomas. I had doubts about Thomas initially, and then he had an absolutely blistering kind of like half season in the under 21s where he was ripping it up. Really started showing the potential that the club had seen in him. They sent him on loan initially to York, and they're having a very good season in the conference, as I still call it, but it's now the National League. And then he's gone on loan to Halifax, and I believe that Halifax might have even triggered a deal to take him on permanently, because again I think Thomas's contract runs out at the end of the season. I think that Luca Thomas could do very well for Halifax. Halifax is my hometown. I would love to see Halifax back in the Football League, and if Luca Thomas can help them get there, they're still in contention for a playoff place. But they've had a very dodgy record in the playoffs at conference level. Such a hard division to get out of, unless you are the very top team in the division, and unfortunately Halifax just keep falling a little short. So I really hope that they can get over the line this time. And again, I wish Luca Thomas the very best, especially if he does end up succeeding with Halifax. Conor Ferguson, another one whose contract I believe is up at the end of the season, and he is actually of the older bracket of players in that youth team. Looked quite a promising little fullback, to be fair, but I believe he is pushing 21 now, and that surprised me. I didn't think it was quite at that end of the youth age scale. But yeah, so Conor Ferguson, I think he might be another one who could be on his way out. If he is of that age, then I think he'll be let go. I don't think he'll be given another professional contract at Leeds United. So again, all the best to Conor, and hope he does very well. So moving on, the other two here, I'm not 100% sure of their contractual situations. Darrell Ombang, Leeds signed him as a youth from Bradford City, and at times looked quite decent in the youth team, but I don't think that he's really kicked on as much as some of the others. I mean, Harry Christie's ahead of him, Rory Mahadi's ahead of him, so, you know, I don't know. I think that Darrell needs to maybe find a move that can get him some first team games, and you know, he's still very young for a goalkeeper, obviously, and definitely has some potential. Definitely has some potential. I just don't think he's going to kick on enough at Leeds. So I don't know. Maybe a return to Bradford, possibly. I don't know. Maybe Halifax might take a look at him in the summer, perhaps. You know, who knows? Who knows? And then finally, Joe Richards, who is a young fullback, if I remember rightly. He's gone on a loan, quite low down the pyramid, just to get some first team games. Richards is, as far as I know, is like one of possibly the youngest out of this group. So he may well return to the under-21s, you know, for this next season, and might be given another crack at it. Might be given another loan spell somewhere, perhaps. I don't think Richards' contract's up, as far as I know. I think he might still have another year on his youth contract, or on his, if he has signed a professional deal, he might have one more year left, perhaps. So yeah, I think Joe Richards might have a chance of getting another loan spell. So that kind of covers that little group. So let's move on to the current squad. Now this is going to be very difficult, because, you know, you could argue that all of these guys deserve a chance to see what they can do in the Premier League. But ultimately, the goal for Leeds United is to stay in the Premier League, and where some of these players will probably be good enough, there's others who won't be, and we have to be very mindful of that. There are a handful in the main squad whose contracts are running out this summer, and there's some players who I believe could well be on their way out for different reasons. So let's have a look at the current first team squad. Let's start with Lemelier. This is going to divide opinion in so many ways, and it's an hard one for me, because I rate Meslier. I think he's going to be a good goalkeeper. I really do. I think there is something there which is going to give Meslier a very good career going forward. He's not a youth anymore by any stretch of the imagination. You know, he's one of Leeds' vice captains this season. I mean, he's never had the armband, because the other two have always been on the pitch at some point in time. But you know, he's still relatively young for a goalkeeper, and has over 200 career appearances so far, which is excellent. You know, it's really good for any keeper of his age. However, he has made some mistakes, not necessarily of his own making. Some of the mistakes could have been avoided had the outfielders done their job, and unfortunately they didn't. However, there's been a couple of what might be classed as unforced errors, if you like. And this basically cost Dylan's place as the Leeds number one for the last few games of the season. So, the conundrum with Illan Meslier is this. He's going to want to play first team football. He's not going to want to be on the bench as a second choice. However, the only way that Meslier is going to improve is if he plays. So, it's going to be a case of whether he is going to be willing to fight for his place, or if maybe he decides that he wants to maybe get a move back to France, where I think he would be very, very good. I think that if he got a move to a Liga club, I think he'd do very well. But you know, is Meslier the answer for for helping to keep Leeds up in the Premier League? Even I have my doubts at the moment. I think that Meslier is a confidence player. When he's playing confidently, he doesn't make as many mistakes, and he's a very good shot stopper. It's just the rest of his game, for the height that he's got, he could catch so many more crosses and corners and things like that. Darlow's proved it. It was far shorter than Meslier, and Darlow's been holding on to things. I think it must just be the style of play for, the difference between English goalkeepers and foreign goalkeepers in terms of how they're coached and what they feel more comfortable with. Foreign goalkeepers tend to punch more. English keepers tend to catch more. As we all know, any goalkeeper who has strong hands and good claiming ability is going to usually do pretty well. So I'm a bit on the fence with Meslier at the minute. Unfortunately, I can't answer it as to whether I would keep Meslier or sell him. I think that we bought him for about 5 million. The question would be, how much could we sell him for? Would it have to be as little as 10 million? Could it be as much as 25 million? Or would it be somewhere in between? It really depends on what Meslier wants, and it depends on what Leeds want from Meslier, like whether they see him as still one of their number one goalkeepers, or if they need somebody else. Because Meslier won't sit on the bench, even in the Premier League. He could have joined Man United or Chelsea as their second choice, and he didn't want to. So, that says a lot about Illan, and fair play to him. He rejected those kind of moves because he wanted to play first team football, and I can't criticise him for that at all. I think that's commendable, especially for a goalkeeper of Meslier's age. He's about 24, 25, so that's very commendable. Moving on to Darlow. Up until recently, I didn't rate Darlow at all. I thought the couple of cup games that he played for Leeds, he was poor. But in terms of how he's done in the league these last couple of games, very good. Can't fault him. Just a couple of tiny little blips, but the catching and the claiming of the ball has just given the defence a whole load of confidence going into these last few games, and I think that's helped Leeds get over the line in terms of gaining their promotion. Is Darlow good enough for Premier League? I would have my doubts, but it can't be underestimated what he's done for Leeds these last few games, and I'm very thankful that Darlow has done that. So do Leeds keep Darlow? I mean, they got him cheap. They got him for a few $100K. But I mean, he's about 33 years old now. He's not a young goalkeeper anymore. Whether we keep Darlow will depend on whether we keep Meslier, I think. So again, like Meslier, I'm going to have to sit on the fence with that one. Finally on to Alex Cairns. He's he served his purpose. You know, being the third choice goalkeeper, it was always important to get someone of Keynes' experience. You know, he's only played first team football at League One and League Two level, but he's very good in the dressing room. He's very, very popular with the other players, you know, which really helps the morale of the team. And again, you know, he's worked very, very closely and very well with the likes of Darlow Emilier and Harry Christie as well. So for me, you know, Keynes won't be on a big contract. I'd keep him as third choice. There's no reason to get a different third choice goalkeeper because they're not going to really play. He hasn't even featured in a cup game. You know, he's either been on the bench or he's not even been in the squad. So yeah, I'd keep Keynes. Just, you know, he's like Leeds United's Scott Carson. You know, like Carson's barely played a match for Man City in the time he's been there. So for me, yeah, Keynes is the easiest decision out of all three, ironically. So moving on to the fullbacks, Jayden Bogle. Let's start with him. He's had a great season, goals and assists, and as the season's gone on, even his defensive work has improved as well. I do, however, think that Jayden Bogle will be exposed in the Premier League. I hate to say this. From an attacking point of view, brilliant. Right? He'll give the bottom half of the Premier League a problem. He's that good. He's surprisingly technical. He's surprisingly technical on the ball. Like some of his footwork in the last couple of games, like really, really good for getting beyond the opposition defenders. Really, really good. And you can't argue with the goals and assists that he's provided this season. Excellent. Really, really good. And for 5 million, a bit of a snip, really. But I just think he lacks a little bit of pace. Now, you know, pace isn't everything. You've still got to have that defensive awareness and that kind of thing. But Bogle has been booked quite a lot this season, as far as I'm aware. From what I remember, I think Bogle's the most booked player in the team this season, and that don't bode well. If you're getting booked in a lot in the Championship, you're going to be a red card in waiting for the Premier League, because when you come up against those better players and the better teams, I just have a real fear that Bogle will get absolutely found out, and you know, we've got to be so defensively tight going into the Premier League, and I just wonder whether Jayden Bogle has got the defensive capabilities. He's absolutely got the attacking capability in bucket loads, but whether he can defend at Premier League level, I don't know. Junior Firpo, his contract runs out this summer, and very much like Jayden Bogle, has had a fantastic season from an attacking point of view. Goals and assists in spades. But Firpo has been found out in the Premier League before with Leeds, and he was poor. You know, him and Bogle have been superb in the Championship, and maybe that's their level. You know, I don't know. I believe that Junior Firpo will probably go back to somewhere like Real Betis, which is the club that he was at before he was at Barcelona. And I think he'd do a good job at Betis. You know, the Spanish La Liga is a different type of top division to the Premier League, and I think that Junior would thrive, you know, playing in that kind of team. But you know, if Firpo does leave this summer, massive thank you to Junior for his efforts this season and last season as well. He was excellent last season as well, and showed more defensive capability at this level. You know, he didn't get found out at this level. He was very, very good. But I do believe Leeds will need better. You know, again, like Farke, you know, Farke's style, is he going to adapt coming up against better players? You know, that's going to be a big question. You know, he loves his fullbacks to bomb on beyond the wingers. I don't know if he can get away with that in this division. I don't know if he can get away with that in the Premier League. So, we'll see. We'll see regarding Firpo. I just have a feeling Firpo's on his way out just because his contract's up. Another player whose contract is up is Sam Byram. Sam Byram is Mr. Reliable. Like, he's a 7 out of 10 every single time. He's not let the club down at any point since he's returned to the club last season. And unlike Bogle and Firpo, Byram is more defensively sound. If it were me, I would offer Byram another contract. I would offer him another contract as a backup fullback, because he does offer that little bit more defensive security than what Bogle and Firpo do. So I would keep Byram. I'd give him another 1 year extension on his current deal. He'll get a promotion bonus just like all these players will. But I would offer Byram another 1 year. I really would. Because he's experienced as well. He has played some games in the Premier League, and that kind of experience you can't ignore that. You can't ignore that. So for me, I'd give Byram another year. Isaac Schmidt, we haven't seen a right lot of him, but when he has played, I think he's looked quite good. He's very lively, gets around the pitch quite well, looks quite technically sound. I genuinely think that Schmidt, could do all right in the Premier League. I don't know. It's very hard to tell because we've not really seen a lot of him. I don't think he's played a lot of minutes this season. But I don't know. I just wonder whether maybe the Premier League might be even more suited to Schmidt than what the Championship is. Low central gravity, reasonably quick, pretty good on the ball. And he's had a season to adapt to English conditions now. So yeah, I'd keep Schmidt. I don't know how much first 11 time he'd get, but I would definitely. He's very versatile as well. He hasn't just covered at fullback. He's covered in a variety of areas, which I think is important. So for me, Schmidt stays. Not necessarily as like a first 11 player, but definitely a very, very good player to have on the bench. So I'd keep Isaac. Moving on to the next row. I just, for the sake of space on the box there, I just put Ampadu in defence. It doesn't really matter. We know he's a midfielder rather than a defender, but he has played a lot of games in defence at Leeds as well. So Ethan Ampadu, he is the club captain. He ain't going anywhere, not unless Leeds receive, I don't know, like a £30 million bid for him or something. Which ain't going to happen. So yeah, Ampadu stays. Pretty straightforward. Same with Rodon. We paid £10 million to bring him to Leeds after he had his full season of loan at Leeds. You don't spend £10 million on a player and then decide that he's surplus to requirement. And he's been a very good centre back for Leeds in the 2 seasons he's been at the club. So yeah, no brainer. Rodon stays. And for me, same with Strauch. I think Strauch has really come on as a player. It's just the injuries. If Pascal could avoid getting injured, I think that Strauch and Rodon could be quite solid even at Premier League level. I really do. I think there's something there. They're both a similar age. Rodon slightly older than Strauch. But they're both units. They're both absolute units. Those are 2 big, strong fellas. And they're both pretty comfortable on the ball as well, which is important. It's not just about your defensive capabilities at centre-back anymore. But in terms of the basics of defending, Rodon and Strauch, there's a little bit of pace there for 2 big guys. Rodon plays the ball out of defence really well. Strauch's had experience at fullback, so again comfortable on the ball. So for me, Rodon and Strauch stay. It's a no-brainer. Max Verber, we haven't seen a lot of Max Berber this season. He's been injured quite a bit, and when he has come in, he's played more at fullback rather than centre back. I think Verba might be on his way out. If we're going to be accommodating a new player at centre back, maybe even two centre backs, because again, Ampadu really is a midfielder, to be honest. Then I think Verba probably gets a move back to maybe Red Bull Salzburg, or a move to the Bundesliga. And I think that probably suits both parties. He was one of the players that had to rebuild his reputation at Leeds after what happened previously, and I think he did that. In the couple of appearances that he made, he played pretty well. He wasn't out of place, and he did quite well, to be fair to him. But I think Verba may be out, if I'm honest, because we've got to get rid of some of these players so that we can accommodate new ones. The club can't be overstretched. So yeah, for me, I think Verba probably goes. Onto the midfield then. Tanaka stays. Simple. Very, very much a no-brainer. A very good all-round midfielder. He can attack. He can defend. He can pass. He can run with the ball. Yeah, no-brainer. And for 3 million, an absolute bargain, quite frankly. Joe Rothwell. I am so torn with this one. He's on loan at Leeds at the moment, and an excellent set piece taker. And sometimes finding a specialist set piece taker is not the easiest thing to do. And Joe is very, very good at it. However, he is pushing 30. And you then have to look at what Joe Rothwell brings to the table aside from set pieces. He does have a trademark kind of like little bursting run with the ball, which anytime that he did that was really good. Like it just, you always thought something was going to be progressively happening when Joe Rothwell made those runs forward. I think if we could get Rothwell for a cheap price, maybe 5 million, something like that, I think it would be worth having him. But I wouldn't pay much more than that, just because of his age and, does he offer enough? Is he a Premier League player? I don't know. Borderline. But without a doubt has contributed this season really, really well. Surprisingly, he's not scored. He's not scored a goal. He's got a whole handful of assists, but he hasn't scored, which I find bizarre, because he's really not a bad player. It'd be great for Joe Rothwell to get a goal in one of the final 2 games if he can come back from injury. Just to top off a great season. I mean, at the Championship, he'd do a job for anyone in the Championship. Absolutely any of them. And he's on loan. Hold on, who's he on loan from? Oh, he's on loan from Bournemouth. I thought he was on loan from Southampton. No, he was loaned to Southampton. Yeah, so he's on loan from Bournemouth. He ain't going to get into the Bournemouth team. So, Bournemouth could make him available for a permanent transfer. But again, at his age, can they really command much more than about 5 million for him? I don't think so. Moving on to Ilya Gruev. This is a difficult one. Gruev last season formed an excellent partnership with Ethan Ampadu. Really, really good. It was his first time in English football and was just a really solid defensive midfielder. Very underrated, just did all the basics really well. Wasn't afraid to go in with a tackle, good passer of the ball. It's just whether he's got enough of an all-round game to succeed in the Premier League. He could. I think maybe he could. I don't know. Good little player, Gruev. Like I think his work goes underrated just a little bit. He's a very calming influence on the ball. Like he don't lose possession often. You know, he's a very tidy defensive midfielder. And we're going to need that kind of character in the Premier League. We're going to need players that are going to give a little bit of confidence to that back four and goalkeeper. And you know, I'm pretty certain that the squad has got all the confidence in the world in Ilya Gruev. I really do. So I'd possibly keep him. You know, whether he gets in the first team on a regular basis, I don't know. But as a squad player, I'd consider keeping him. Josh Gilavogi came in when we had a midfield crisis. All those midfielders got injured, and he's come in an amazing attitude. He's come in knowing that he was just going to be a backup, and so he's got such an infectious personality that has just rubbed off on the rest of the squad. Highly experienced, an absolute unit. Like, he's a big bloke, and yeah, just comes across like an absolute professional. I love that. You know, I think that personality and attitude is half the battle won. I really do. And you know, he's not featured that much. He's made a whole handful of relatively short substitute appearances just to show things up at the back. You know, just to see games out and things like that. And I'm certain that his presence in training and in the build up to matches has been vital. You know, for how this season's panned out. Would I keep him on for the Premier League? I would say no. I think maybe he's just a bit slow. If I was to be totally critical, I just think he'd lack a little bit of pace, and that potentially, you know, could put Leeds in a bit of a sticky situation. And based on the circumstances of why he joined in the first place, he's aware that he is about fifth choice midfield, you know, fourth or fifth choice, and so I think for me, you know, big thank you to Josh Gilavogi for coming in and you know, just being part of the team, you know, just doing what he has done, getting on with it. And he's clearly enjoyed himself. You can, you know, he's always trained with a smile on his face, which is what you need. But nah, I think I'd be wishing him well and hope that he finds himself another club, because whoever gets him is getting an absolute top professional. Whether he stays in England or maybe goes back to France or something, I don't know. But yeah, wherever he goes, they'll be getting a good, solid professional player there. Moving on to the wingers. Now, this is the wings is an area of the pitch that we have absolutely excelled at this season. They've all chipped in. They've all done well. Dan James, let's start with him. Over 20 goal contributions this season, goals and assists combined. Another very, very good season. You can't teach the pace. That pace will scare the living hell out of opposition defences next season. And for me, I think it's a no-brainer. He stays. He's revigorated himself after having a very dodgy period, where he ended up going on a very dodgy loan to Fulham. It never worked out for him there. But I think that under Farker, James is a key part of the process. And with that pace, you just know you've got a player on your hands there. Because he's improved his output. That was the big criticism of Dan James. Could he score goals? Could he assist other players to score goals? And he's improved that massively in the space of 2 seasons. So for me, Dan James stays, no brainer. Manor Solomon, very much like Joe Rothwell, came in on a season-long loan and has done very well. Again, like Dan James, has got about 20 goal involvements this season, goals and assists combined. Really good. Plays on the left, cuts inside on that right foot. Obviously, very technically gifted player. And I think that, you know, because he's been able to prove his fitness now after having a couple of seasons, you know, dogged with injuries. If we can get Manor for maybe 10-15 million, then you know, I think it would be worth keeping him. You can't argue with a player that gets 20 goal involvements off the wing. I'm sorry, you just can't. You can't argue with that. So for me, I would try and get him. Like Tottenham is a very difficult place to buy players from because Daniel Levy just. I mean, he'd be suited to being a director of football at Brighton. With how difficult it is to get players from them on, you know, for a good price, you just don't do it. Tottenham are very similar. So for me, I think it'd be quite difficult to get Solomon for a decent price, but I would go up to maybe 15 million for him, I think, which I think would be you know, when you consider he's been playing in the Championship for this season, I don't think that would be totally unreasonable. Won't go over 20. If they demand over 20, forget it. We'll have to look at other options. But he's integrated himself into the squad really well. Had some fantastic performances at times this season. So for me, yeah, I would try and buy Solomon if we can. Will Gnonto, very up and down season for Wilfred Gnonto. At times has looked brilliant. But so hit and miss. But again, he's only 21 years old. You know, he could definitely improve. You know, he's got a handful of caps for the Italian national side, for Christ's sake. There's a player there. And I actually think that he actually looked pretty good in the Premier League. You know, Premier League teams were doubling up on him all the time. So for me, I'd keep him. I just think there's still a hell of a lot of potential there. And I would go as far as saying the same for Ramazani. If he can patch up his differences with Daniel Farke, Ramazani was never afraid to shoot on goal and have an attack and have a real good go at it. And again, he's, you know, like Gnonto, he's bagged himself some goals and assists this season despite not playing regularly. So yeah, from a wing point of view, I mean, I'd probably keep all 4 of them. I think all 4 of them could have a part to play, and play quite well in the Premier League. I really do. So yeah, and again, there was quite a steep outlay on Ramazani. You know, we spent about 7 million on him. Spent about 5 million on Gnonto all them seasons ago. It feels like Gnonto's been around at least for quite a while now. But yeah, I'd keep all 4. Moving on to the forward areas. I'll start like, even though the order's different, I'll start with Aronson because he plays as a 10, as an attacking midfielder rather than a striker. Leeds spent a shed load on Aronson, around 22 million, I believe, when we originally got him, and he's had his critics. But again, Aronson has had a very good season. He's gotten goals and assists from that 10 role. He's played a lot of games. He has played a lot of games, but his output has been very good. And there could still be a player in there. Again, he's only going to be going into the age of about 24 going into this new season. So I still think there's a player there. And the thing is as well, totally from a financial point of view, when you spend 22 million on a player, how much are you going to be able to sell him for if you are wanting to replace him? I don't know whether we get the 22 million back for Aronson. I really don't. So I would probably keep him, but he definitely needs support. We definitely need to be in for another number 10. You know, we can't rely on one number 10. It's that simple. We need another natural 10. It's that simple for me. But I would probably keep him. Certainly as a squad 10, even if he's not the regular first 11 10. Joel Pirro. He's another that breathes hot and cold, isn't he? He'll, like, 1 minute he'll go on a streak where he just scores goals, and then he'll go on a streak where he's non-existent. And again, there's some games where he practically does nothing. He hardly gets any touches of the ball. And then there's others where he's an absolute fox in the box. I mean, he's on 19 goals, but he scored 4 against Stoke. And that was after 9 games without scoring. So it's like, what do you do with someone like Joel Pirro? I mean, at the end of the day, we bought him for 10 million. I think we keep him, but we definitely need 1, possibly 2 more strikers. That are going to bag some goals in the Premier League. Joel Pirro's not had the opportunity to try his hand in the Premier League, so we don't know whether he'll be any good or not. At Championship level, he's very good. He is a consistent 1 in 2 player. 1 goal every 2 appearances. He had that record at Swansea, and he'll probably end up with that kind of record at Leeds as well. So I'd definitely keep him, but we need some better quality, to really push Joel on. Hopefully that encourages Joel to do better. Patrick Bamford, he's one of the longest serving players in the current squad now, I believe. He's been around a while now. We've obviously spent 7 million on him, which was a big outlay at the time. He's had 2 very good seasons where he got 15 goals in the Championship and then 17 in the Premier League. His injuries have absolutely crippled his career whilst he's been at Leeds, and it's such a shame. It's an absolute shame, because a confident Bamford is a very decent striker, but he thrives on confidence and he thrives on being fit, because he ain't fit often enough, and that is the problem. But since coming back from his most recent injury, I think he's looked very tidy. I think he's looked very good on the ball, and again, that hold-up play, he's having a go at goal, which is what you want from your striker. And he was very unlucky to have a goal choked off. His goal was clearly onside. That he scored a game or 2 ago, and that was a real shame. I think that Pat Bamford's time at Leeds is possibly up. I think he's about 31 years old now, and I just think he needs to find a team where he will still be the number 9, basically. The first choice number 9. I just don't think that. I don't think that's at Leeds anymore. But a massive thank you to Patrick Bamford for his efforts at Leeds, and I wish him all the best. He's done very well at Leeds, in my opinion. Just very, very unlucky with the amount of injuries that he's had. And then Matteo Joseph. If it were me, I'd send him out on loan. I think there's a real player in Joseph, but he needs to find a loan where he's going to get regular game time and that he can get his goal scoring form back. If he can get a loan, maybe to Spain, maybe to a La Liga team where he can get regular first team games, and then come back a better player, or at the very least top end Championship, and just have a season where he's banging the goals in for fun. He just needs that, and then all being well, he comes back to Leeds a better player, a more consistent goal scorer. He knows where the net is. He absolutely obliterated the under-21s, and then came into the first team. I just wonder whether there was maybe a bit too much pressure on him to be that main focal point, that main number 9. And yeah, he just needs a loan spell. Simple as that. I'd definitely keep him, because I think there's a real player there. But again, he's still only about 22. He's got bags of time, bags of time, but needs a solid loan spell just to get out there, get some games, get some goals, and crack on. So, that's my take on the current squad. Let's have a look at potential new players. Now, I've basically put together a list of what would potentially be a first 11, technically, and an honourable mention at the bottom there as well. So let's go through these now. In goal, Nick Pope. It's been rumoured that Leeds are interested in Pope, and I think that Pope would be a very good addition. He's experienced, he's an England international, he's a big dude, about 6'5", commands his box, and has proved to be a very good goalkeeper for Newcastle. But I just have a feeling that Newcastle might look to get a newer, younger model in there that basically would then force Pope into second place at the club. And at Pope's age, he's not going to be wanting to sit on the bench. So for me, I think Nick Pope, I think we could get him for anything up to 10 million. I think we'd get him. I really do. I think we would have a realistic chance of getting Nick Pope. I really do. Onto the fullback positions. Now, both of these players, as far as I'm aware, are both out of contract at the end of this season. And I think that if the two players can get over their injury problems that they've had, Tariq Lamptey in particular, Lamptey was very highly rated as a teenager, very, very highly rated. He's got over 100 games in the Premier League, still quite young, he's only about 24 I think, 23, 24. He would fit the profile that Farke kind of looks for in new players. And then his the other player I mentioned there, Tyrick Mitchell, he's been at Crystal Palace a long time now, but again he's still only in his early to mid 20s. I think Lamptey and Mitchell, and again I think both of those contracts are coming up at the end of the season, so I would consider targeting both of those, because again Tyrick Mitchell's not far off 200 games in the Premier League. He's experienced. So I would take a punt on both of those. I really would. Moving on to centre back, Nico Alvedi currently plays at Borussia Mönchengladbach. He's a player, a Swiss international who Daniel Farke managed when he managed Gladbach. He's been linked with Leeds United for a while, and he's a player that Farke knows. So I think that I think we could get Alvedi for a fairly achievable price. And as I say, he has been rumoured to be interested in a move. So that could be a very, very astute signing. And next to him, let's get some Premier League experience in there. And at the moment, he's 31 years old now, but he's got an absolute ton of experience. Ben Davies, Welsh international, over 90 caps for Wales. Has been at Tottenham Hotspur for God knows how long. I think he was at Swansea previously when Swansea were a Premier League team. Absolute ton of experience. Nearly 300 games, nearly 300 career games. So for me, he's not a very big defender. I think he's just under 6 foot, but with all of that experience, you can't ignore that. I don't think he would cost a shed load from Tottenham either. So again, that could be a real dose of experience that the club will need going forward. Going into midfield, Julian Weigl, he also plays at Borussia Mönchengladbach. And I think he was Daniel Farke's most used player when Farke managed Gladbach. He's in his late 20s, German international. I think that if Daniel Farke can bring him in, I think it's a very useful addition. Again, highly experienced at a top level division in the Bundesliga. So for me, yeah, get him in. The next one might be a bit controversial, but Calvin Phillips. When he was last at Leeds, he was a beast. He was fantastic. Really, really good. Just sat as the anchor man in front of the defence and just did it all. Good tackler, good passer, strong as an ox. You didn't get past him. And since his move to Man City, you know, I mean, he's you know, let's not forget that his time at Leeds got him capped for England. And he was even being considered for a cap for England whilst we were still in the Championship, for Christ's sake. Phillips now is in his late 20s, but I think he could still do a job. And if there is one club that Calvin could just refine that form that he had a few seasons ago, Leeds is that club. Has to be. You know, he'd have that passion to get back to his best in a Leeds shirt. You just know he's going to give his all if he rejoins Leeds. Now, obviously, his wages are through the roof, so it would be a loan deal, unless some kind of negotiation could be put in place. Otherwise, it would be a loan from Manchester City. Leeds might have to offer maybe half of his wages or something, and pay a few million as a loan fee. And it would be questionable as to whether Calvin could work in a double pivot as opposed to being the anchor man. But, you know, as I say, very highly experienced now. And you just know he would give his all for Leeds. So, moving on to the wings. This next choice might be seen as a little bit average. But Jacob Murphy at Newcastle has had an extremely good season, one of the best of his career in terms of goals and assists. Now, he is 30 years old now, so he's not of the kind of profile that Farke would usually look to, but he is highly experienced. He's got loads of games in the Premier League, and you know, he's got to be worth considering. It wouldn't cost a shed load either. I just feel that Newcastle will look to upgrade on the wings. And, you know, for me, you know, again, it's just having that experience. You bring Murphy in on that right wing, him and Dan James, you know, battling it out for that right wing position. I could see it. And again, wouldn't break the bank. You know, it wouldn't break the bank for Leeds to bring someone like Murphy in. On the left wing, I've gone for Daizen Maeda. Currently plays for Glasgow Celtic. He's had a very productive season up there in the Scottish Premier League. I believe he's got over 20 goal involvements this season on the left wing. Japan international. He'll probably know how Tanaka very well. And a pretty good player. You know, it's questionable as to whether he'd be good enough for the Premier League, but you never can tell. Nobody knew if Tanaka would be good enough for the English Championship, and he was clearly far too good, really, for the Championship. So yeah, I'd take a punt on Maeda. Again, I don't think he would break the bank in terms of bringing him in. Leeds are going to have to be very savvy. They're going to have to be very financially savvy with who they bring in. Bring in quality and bring in Premier League experience. If you can get a combination of that, you're going to do well. So yeah, I'd take a punt on Maeda. Especially if we can't get Manor Solomon. You know, if we can't nail Solomon down to a permanent deal, then I think Maeda would be a good option. Moving on to the number 10. Now this is a player I didn't know anything about. But I've had a look at the stats, and his stats are impressive. He's got over 20 goal involvements in the number 10, playing for FC20, and it's the 23-year-old Dutch number 10, Sem Stein. Looks very, very good. And at 23-year-old, I think he's got potential. I think he'll go under the radar as well. The fact that he didn't play for Ajax, PSV or Feyenoord, I think that he'll go under the radar. And this could allow Leeds to come in. And again, I just don't think that at 23 and playing for FC20, I don't think they're going to command a massive fee for him. I don't think that their finances would allow them to command much of anything over 20 million. I think he'd be worth a punt. I really do. You don't end up you don't end up getting over 20 goal involvements, goals and assists combined. You don't get that and not be a good player. You know, the Eredivisie, it's not necessarily as strong as the Premier League or the Bundesliga or La Liga, but for a player to get that kind of goal involvement and not play for one of the Dutch big three, I think that's impressive. I'd take a punt on the kid. I really would. At 23-year-old, he's got plenty of time to improve, and if he can adapt to the English style, I think there's a player there. I really do. And then finally up front, this was a difficult one. Trying to find someone that was, that's had a good season, and someone that could potentially adapt to the English style. I've gone for another Borussia Mönchengladbach player, but it's not a player that played under Farke when he was manager there. This is the striker Tim Kleindienst. I think he could be a very good replacement for Bamford. Kleindienst is about 6'4". He's a big unit. He's got around 20 goal involvements this season, playing in the Bundesliga. 29-year-old now, so he's not a spring chicken anymore. But I just wonder whether maybe something like that could really cause some defences some real problems. He's obviously not afraid to, for a player being that size, he'll muscle it out with, with all the opposition defences, and he can clearly score a goal. And that's what we're after. We're after someone that can potentially get maybe 15 goals in the Premier League, certainly at least 10 or 12, and I just wonder whether Kleindienst might be able to do that. And again, I don't think he'd command a massive fee either. One of the key aspects of this group of players that I've selected here is that we're going to have to be very careful with PSR, or whatever you call it these days, FIFA financial fair play, or whatever the hell it's called these days. And these are all players that are not going to absolutely break the bank. We can't do an Ipswich and just sign all of the Championship's best players, because it clearly doesn't work. You just can't do it. And the thing is that we're going up with most of the best players from the Championship, so it really wouldn't be of any benefit either way. Premier League experience is massive, and that's why half of this 11 has got an absolute ton of it. And then players that would be adaptable, or I think would be adaptable, because they've played with Farke, or they're coming from a league like the Bundesliga or the Eredivisie, where players like that can adapt to the English divisions. And I just wanted to give an honourable mention and a big shout out to James Milner, 39-year-old, and he's still going. He's still playing. Like, you can't substitute the amount of experience that Milner has. And if Leeds could just get him on a free, he ain't gonna be hanging around at Brighton, I don't think. So for me, get him in, even if it's as a player coach. Just get him in. His experience will help the rest of the team massively. You just know it will. He's still strong as an ox. He's still fit as a fiddle. Get him in. He ain't going to command a huge amount of wages either at this stage of his career. He'll be happy just to play a part and be at the club that he started out at. I'm sure that Milner would love to finish his playing career at Leeds United. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Get him in. Get him in. So just to kind of conclude the whole stream here, it's been a long one, but this is what it's about. There's a lot of stuff to discuss when it comes to Leeds United and going up to the Premier League. So quite clearly, Daniel Farke needs new players. The current squad isn't good enough to stay up. He will need reinforcements. It's that simple. And he needs it to be the right kind of player. Get the quality in. Don't just spend money for the sake of spending money. Right? You can spend 200 million, but if you spend 200 million on average, you're going down. Right? It's that simple. So the recruitment has to be bang on. Get the right recruitment, get those new players in, but get the right kind of quality. Farke's also going to need time. He's going to need time for the new players to adapt with the current players. He's going to need time to see if he can make it work. Now, time isn't something that Leeds can afford. If we get off to a bad start, if we haven't got, say at least 8 points out of the first 8 games, I think Farke could be gone. I just feel we need to get off to a very solid start. A lot of it will be dependent on who we get early on in the fixtures. As long as we don't get too many of the big hitters early on, then I think Farke will have a chance, to have that little bit of time and, see where we go from there. But he needs time. Yeah, you either, when the current championship season's over, you either get rid of him straight away or you give him time. You don't sack him after 2 or 3 games if we end up losing the first 2 or 3 games. You can't do it because by that point he'll have brought his own players in, and then the new manager's got to adapt with those new players that are all Farke's players. And most of the current squad are Farke's players now. You only got the likes of Aronson and Bamford, just to name a couple that aren't, Farke signings, basically. So, yeah, it needs time. Leeds also need a good pre-season. We need a pre-season where the players don't get injured. We need a pre-season where the players are going to adapt quickly. And yeah, the pre-season is going to be vital. Getting the right amount of training in, and getting the right fixtures. Get the right kind of friendlies in. I know we've got a friendly against Man United in Scandinavia, which I find a very bizarre friendly. I don't think we need to be having friendlies against teams that we're going to be playing regular in the season. Quite frankly, I think that's a mistake. But that's up to the club, isn't it, really? Leeds need a lot of luck with avoiding injuries. If we can keep our best players fit, we will do okay. But we need some serious luck with it. Losing the midfielders when we lost them this season, that could have completely derailed our season. In the end, it didn't. But we can't take that chance. So we have to have a lot of good luck with avoiding injuries this season. We have to. And Farke needs to get his new players in early. Traditionally in recent seasons, Leeds have got their business done very late on, because earlier on clubs will hike a bigger price for their players if they're going to sell their players on. So, any of Farke's targets, they need to be signed nice and early. It's that simple. Get them in early, give them a good pre-season. Don't have them coming in and we've already played the first game of the season in the Premier League. What good does that do? Leeds need to do their business early, in my opinion. And finally, to have a comfortable season, Leeds need 40 points to stay up. I know that the level has been very, very, very low this season. And that average number of points to stay up is getting lower season upon season. But to have a comfortable season where we're not battling to stay out of that bottom 3, if we get 40 points, I believe we stay up. So let's get it. Let's get those 40 points and let's stay in the Premier League. And then after that, once we've had a season of consolidation, we can then start building. Because then we'll only need a couple of new players every season. instead of getting a whole bunch of new ones in. You know, we can just get 2 or 3 in every season, build a real good Premier League squad. You know, Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, Forest, Fulham. You know, they've all done it. They've done it on a gradual process. Wolves, you know, Crystal Palace. You know, all of these clubs have just slowly and gradually built their squads over time, and they've sustained their Premier League status. You know, and that's what Leeds need to do now. Leeds need to step up. They need to be the first example for a couple of seasons where they are not going straight back down. So, you know, take some confidence from all of these that have sustained their Premier League status for the last couple of seasons, and try and emulate that, and in as many cases as possible try and better that. You know, I'm not saying that we're going to do a Nottingham Forest and finish in the bloody Champions League spots. You know, I'm not after that. I'm just after consolidation for the first season, and then just build and build and build, season upon season. And in the next, you know, if we can sustain ourselves for 4 or 5 seasons, I reckon then we start pushing to be a top half team, and maybe even a European team again. You know, I still remember when we got to the Champions League semi-final in the early 2000s, and how good we were. We were a good, young squad, and my God, did we have some quality. If we can get to that kind of level again, we'll be absolutely fine. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take money. But again, with the stadium expansion plans and things like that, you know, Ellen Road is going to be absolutely rocking, and I really believe the club will be up for it. So I just hope that the players and the staff all do their bit. But there we go, folks. Bit of a long one, that, but I think we've covered a lot of points, and we know what the challenge is now. Leeds just need to finish this current season, get these final 2 games out of the way, enjoy themselves. They've earned a week away with their families to go and enjoy themselves, and then they'll come back fit, come back in good shape, and have a damn good crack at it. You know, give it your all and do everything it takes to stay in the Premier League. Don't just be another one of the last 6 that have just come straight down. So do please leave your thoughts in the comments down below, folks. Do you think that the players that I think should stay should stay? Do you think that others need to go? Do you think that we've got a chance of getting any of these players that I've listed on in the top right box there? Do you think any of those are worth getting? I think that maybe we need to look at quality that's even better than those guys. But I've tried to be realistic. You know, there's no point in me saying, right, let's just go and get Messi because he's out of contract. You know, Lionel Messi's not going to come to Leeds, so you know, I'm not going to be unrealistic like that. As much as I'd love to see it, even at the age of 37, I would quite happily see Lionel Messi in a Leeds shirt. But you know, we've got to be completely and utterly realistic about this, and I believe that all of these players in that list are completely realistic in terms of what we could potentially get. So let's see. But big thank you as always for watching. If you've made it through this one, you've done amazing, because this has been a bit of a long video, this one. But I'll be on again hopefully within the next few days, and in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next 3 more video. Bye for now.